There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again on another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Micheal Pacheco, and today with me I have Steven Eno. Any relation, Steven?
No relation to Brian Eno. You get asked that quite a bit.
I keep this on my desk here, Oblique Strategies. That's Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt.
Nice, that's awesome.
If you guys, for anyone listening or watching, if you haven't checked that out, Oblique Strategies by Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt, those are great, just kind of little cards to help you work through things. I digress. Getting back to the podcast, Steven here has been exploring every facet of the high school education system for the past decade. His mission is to improve the coaching system for high school students so that every student has access to the best coaches in the world. Steven, welcome to the Remarkable Coach podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. This is exciting. So tell me, I'd like to start out the podcast by just kind of inviting our guests to talk a little bit about themselves and tell us a little bit more about what you do.
So right now my main kind of focus is helping high school students get access to high quality computer science education through Two Sigma School. So we're an early stage startup, and we are trying to work with schools around the country who can't offer computer science for various reasons. They can't find a teacher. They don't know what curriculum to use. They don't have the technology expertise to build out the infrastructure. So we want to come in and basically offer computer science to every student. And we do it in a unique way in that, like, we don't want to just be your traditional classroom. We don't want to just be kind of lecturing and telling students like, hey, here's how conditionals work. Here's how loops work. We want to actually coach the students to say, okay, what are your goals? What are some problems you want to solve? And like, let's start figuring out the skills to solve them using computational thinking. So we want to help students realize that computer science isn't like this boring, like, oh, I have to learn syntax. I have to work with this weird editor. I have to learn like this new language. We want them to see like, it's kind of like having this magical power where you can basically tell a computer what to do, and then it'll do things for you. So we want to coach students to identify problems and to be able to navigate the resources that they have at their fingertips to be able to solve any problem creatively using computers. So yeah, that's my main goal right now, but I do a lot of other things as well, coaching students through the Spike Lab, which is just kind of one-on-one coaching, where we help students build entrepreneurial projects just to kind of set them apart in this crazy admissions world that we live in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love, we were talking before I hit record, and I was very much into computers and computer programming in high school and middle school. And I love your approach where you're teaching them not necessarily, you're not opening with syntax and a bunch of boring stuff, but it's really kind of focusing on the idea that if you can learn how to do this, you kind of open up like a magical door, and you can have the computer do stuff for you. And that, like, really anything, right? Anything that you can conceive, you can theoretically do in a computer. And I remember when I was, 11, 12 years old, and I first discovered BASIC, and figuring out, how to do stuff in there and make the computer do stuff for me. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. And it's very exciting and empowering.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's our hope, is to empower students. And we think that like the main issue is not like access to information. So if a student has a phone or any access to the internet,
sure.
They can watch videos and they can learn pretty much anything they want to. So it's not an issue with access to the information. It's the issue with that coach. Like, if you think about like in the past, when students didn't have access to that information, they needed a teacher to give them that information. Now what they need is someone to coach them through the challenges. And that's the main thing we're trying to build at Two Sigma School, is basically what we've identified some of the key points where students get stuck. And we want to be able to say, okay, we are the fastest, we know the best ways and the fastest ways to get students unstuck and to coach them through those challenges so that they can get to that next level where it's like, oh, this is what I can do with computer science. There's that threshold where students are like, computer science isn't for me. We want to coach them and help them realize it can be once you get past that level of kind of frustration and dealing with the little issues.
Yeah, I can't think of any vocation really that wouldn't benefit from some level of being able to sit down at a keyboard and just creatively solve whatever problem it is that you're faced with, right? I mean, honestly. So cool. What explain to me, what is the difference between a teacher and a coach?
Yeah, great question. That's something I've been trying to kind of define and figure out myself. I've been coaching sports since I started coaching, or sorry, since I started teaching. So I've always had that coach kind of mentality. Big fan of John Wooden, big fan of a lot of these coaches who have kind of influenced education just through preparation, through their systems. So I've always had that coach lens in the classroom. And I think that's one of the things, like I actually coached high school football before I got into the high school classroom. And so I always had that lens before I had the teacher lens. And as I got into teaching, I had some amazing mentors who really guided me away from the traditional teacher mindset, away from like focusing on content, away from me being like the person who gives all of the answers or gives all the information, to really kind of finding a good problem and coaching students through that problem. And so I've taught engineering, I've taught computer science, I've taught innovation programs that combine entrepreneurship with engineering. And through like the common through line is that I've always leaned more towards coaching than I have towards teaching. And so like the way that I kind of think about it is that like a traditional teacher like has to wear many hats. They have to kind of live in this education system, where the coach really has a lot more freedom. They have a lot more ability to really like build students, but more, instead of like doing the work for them, the coach is always on the side, kind of just giving recommendations and saying, hey, like, why don't you try this? Why don't you do it this way? It might help you get to your goals faster. And so that's where I see myself more as a coach that's kind of making recommendations and a teacher giving grades. And so that's kind of the way I think about it in my head.
I love it. I want to circle back. You brought up John Wooden, and I think that's a really great, that would be really great context for this conversation. Can you talk just real briefly, just a little bit more about who John Wooden is and why that matters in this discussion that you and I are having right now?
Yeah, excuse me. Absolutely. Yeah. So John Wooden was a basketball coach at UCLA. He's the winningest college basketball coach in history. So I think there was a run where he had 7 national championships in a row. And he also won, I believe, 10 overall. And so just amazing statistics, excuse me, from an output standpoint. But what's most important about John Wooden is kind of his philosophy, is kind of focusing on the little things in order to accomplish the big things. So John Wooden famously, the first practice of college basketball, taught his players how to put on their socks. And again, you might think like these are college athletes, they know how to put on their socks.
Fundamentals, baby.
Right, exactly. He said there's a right way to put on your socks. And if you can't do that correctly, you're not going to be able to do anything else correctly. But he has, again, a pyramid of success. He has a lot of these kind of systems that you can think through as a teacher and as a coach that can help your players succeed. And so I've leaned heavily on a lot of his writing and just his philosophies. And I think if you think about like the education space, in the last 100 years, there's not many people who stand out as like they've had a huge impact on education, which is sad to say. There's no like revolutionary thinkers or anything like that. So there's a few people, and John Wooden's one of them, who stands out as kind of one of those leaders and one of those people who are above the rest in terms of their teaching and their coaching. And so that's why I love to kind of refer back to John Wooden and just learn from him and try to implement his practices about preparation and his small little idioms that really help students like pick up things really quickly.
Yeah, I feel like from what little I know about him, I probably don't know as much as you do, but it feels like I get the sense that he thinks about coaching a little bit differently. And there is that element of, and now I'm trying to think about how I would define coaching versus teaching, but he thinks about it differently, and he might define it a little bit differently. The story that I had heard, and it could be completely wrong, but the story that I had heard was that he taught his students, his players, how to tie their shoes. You're saying it was put their socks on. Maybe it was both. But the idea, I think, is that, if you can't do the basics very, very well, all of that, like everything builds on top of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit more about your program and why high school students, why are you doing this?
Yeah, so basically I've always had my focus on high school students. I think like that's such a crossroads for all of us, for everyone who's trying to figure out who they are. But it's also that point where you can really start to develop the skills that can set you up for the rest of your life, the rest of your career as well. And so like high school curriculum and the high school experience, unfortunately hasn't changed much. And there's just a lot of opportunity to help out a lot of kids just by doing some small, like giving them small nudges towards the skills that can really help them out. And so that's why we're focusing on high school computer science, because if we can level everybody up at the high school level, we think it's going to really have a positive impact globally on the future.
Mm-hmm. Right on. And how do you roll your programs out to, let's say underprivileged high schools where they are having trouble finding a teacher or curricula?
Yeah, so basically we're an all-in-one solution. So our goal is that basically an administrator just has to send us an email and it's, we want computer science at our school. And the reason why the name is 2 Sigma, it's based on a paper that Bloom wrote in the 80s, basically saying that if you can provide 2 things to students, one-on-one tutoring and mastery learning, you can shift their outcomes by 2 Sigma. So basically you can take the 50th percentile and have them at the 95th percentile of outcomes. And so that's why that's our North Star is to focus on that 2 Sigma problem. And basically we want to offer that level of education to any school that just simply emails us. So that's all they have to do, is we want to try to remove all of the headaches, all of the barriers, and we'll do everything. So we'll work with their IT team, we'll work with their department chairs, we'll work with whoever, like their administrators, we'll do everything. And we'll just basically take our program and our approach and make it fit into their current model. So every school is going to be different about how they approach grading, how they approach teaching. And so we want to come in and say, yeah, we will fit in our model into yours, but then we will basically like show that our approach is going to produce those 2 Sigma outcomes and hopefully have an influence on the rest of the school. And so obviously we can't be there in person for all the schools we work with around the country. So what we do is we essentially have a teacher or another teacher who has a prep period, or even like an administrator who is able to sit in the classroom, just sit there. They don't have to do anything. They just have to be a person in the room to help the students get onto a computer. And then we come in virtually and we coach the students. We use a flipped classroom model. So they have access to content. They have access to the actual, like the lectures. And then what we do is we coach in the classroom. So during our live classroom time, we're there coaching through problems. So we give them exercises, we give them projects to build, and we essentially spend all of our live time just coaching the students. And so we're building out a platform that can optimize, like myself as a teacher, I'm already like interacting with more students than I would in person. I can do basically 3 to 4 times as much interaction with the students online with all the tools that we put together. And so that's the goal, is just to really kind of increase the reach. And so a teacher can have that one-to-one mentoring a lot easier and at a lot bigger virtually, especially on the computer science side of things.
Nice. How many schools are you guys currently working with?
So this is our first year. We're currently working with 6 schools in 6 different states. And so we really want to meet the needs of based on every state's different with their requirements for teachers, their curricular requirements. And so we really want to make sure we can work with anybody in the country. And so, yeah, we're excited to be working with these six schools, and we're hoping to grow as well.
What's your growth plan? Are you planning on sticking to America or sticking to the United States? Are you going to move up to Canada eventually, go global with this?
Yeah, for right now, the United States has such a dire need. We're going to stay in the US at first. Again, our growth is going to be in the type of classes that we offer. So right now, most schools are just looking for intro computer science and maybe like an AP level computer science. But we also are offering cybersecurity. We're offering data science. We're offering artificial intelligence. So we want to offer all levels. So there's going to be some students who want to really push the boundaries on the high level, and then there's others that are going to need an intro level. So that's where we want to grow right now, is just really offer the highest quality in terms of coursework. And then eventually, like depending on the market demands, we may grow into the college level. Again, we may go down to middle school, just depending on what schools need support with.
Nice. Talk a little bit more about your courses. So are you guys, for example, your intro to computer science, are you working in Python with that, or can the student pick, whatever direction they want to go?
Yeah, so basically what we view ourselves as coaches is we're curating the best material for our students. And so we've canvassed every intro course at the college level and that's available for high schools. And we've decided, hey, we're going to recommend a Python intro course because of its accessibility. And what we also do is we have exercises and projects that are visual. So we want our students to be able to get visual feedback, and they're not just working with text the whole time. They're creating pictures, they're creating moving animations, and they're getting feedback from what they're writing in code. And so we're basically, again, continuing to gather data around what works best to get students past that plateau of like, hey, this is frustrating, I'm stuck, I don't really know what to do. And what we're finding is the more visual feedback students get, the better they can understand complex ideas like data structures and navigating all of these nested loops and conditional. So now they can actually see what's happening with the code that they're writing.
So visually, what kind of visual feedback are you guys doing or working with there? Are you just, is it like, hello world across the screen, or do you actually have like some libraries that you're bringing in that do like visual graphs or that sort of thing, or?
Yeah. So on our website we have a lot of projects I can share out. I can't share out, but you can see on our website on Two Sigma School, twosigma.school. You can see a lot of our student projects. And so on our projects tab, you can see that they're creating in our intro course, they're creating things like the old school Frogger game and Pac-Man and things like that.
Steven, if you want to share your screen, this is an audio podcast, but this will also be, the video will be posted on YouTube. So if you'd like to share your screen and share some of that, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll share out real quick. So here is our website and just some sample projects. This is all from our intro class. And so you can see it's using Python. This is using a graphics library that's from Carnegie Mellon. So it's just the CMU graphics library. And yeah, you can see that students are playing, again, a lot of these things you can see they're not like perfectly functional, but you can see students are making different games, they're making jet takeoffs, they're doing things that are based on a lot of their interests, whether it's tennis matches, we've had different Christmas and holiday themed, we have baseball fields as well. So yeah, we have a lot of these on our website, but we're going to continue to add more and more as the students create. And this is all in Python. We actually have students working in Java as well, and we'll post some of those up here as well. So yeah, we're excited that the students are showing a lot of what they can do. Again, as you can see in this visual medium.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think Python is probably the right choice for an intro class. I'm glad you're not starting people out with like PHP or something.
Right.
Something awful like that.
Right.
Awesome. So is this all of this? Is this like graded on their regular report card through the school system, or how does that work?
Yeah. So one of the things that we believe is high school students are so busy, they really don't have time just to do things like just for the joy of learning, which is kind of sad to say. Like it's really hard for a high school student to like have a full high school load. Plus they have to want to do sports. They have all these extracurriculars. They don't have time to like do something outside that isn't necessary for credit. So that's the great part of our program is we're fully accredited. Students can take a course with us, whether it's out the summertime. We have some self-paced independent courses as well. And they get a full transcript. They get full credit for taking courses with us. And so that's the great thing is that it can meet, like if you're in the state of California, it can meet math credit requirements.
Nice.
It can meet we're A through G approved, so they can get UC science credits for it as well. And so it's helping them, again, get through some of the hurdles and the loops that they have to jump through in order to either get to college or even get college credit through the AP or College Board.
Nice. What kind of struggles have you guys faced as you're expanding into new territories, i.e. new states, and every state has a slightly different take on what a credit means for a math credit, for example, right? I mean, I feel like that's got to be a major barrier to entry to expansion.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is the biggest challenge we've had is the fact that we're like a new approach to teaching and learning. So a lot of schools think I have to hire a person that's going to fill our curricular needs. So they actually have to find a computer science teacher to teach their computer science. The fact that we're not like that person that's going to come in the classroom, and administrators can be a little bit more creative of who they put in the classroom, and who the teacher of record is. That's just a new way of thinking. And so that's been the biggest challenge, is to help administrators realize that there's other options out there. They can see that some administrators have like a bad taste in their mouth about virtual learning because of what happened during COVID and like the quick switch that had to happen. And so they don't see it as high quality. And so what we are trying to battle is like, hey, we actually are higher quality than what most of you can provide by hiring the closest person you could find, or the only person who applied for a computer science position. That's what a lot of schools, right? A lot of schools have to deal with is like, oh, I have to convert a math teacher to teach computer science, and they can like be the lead learner is one of the terms that a lot of people use, is like, yeah, we'll just convert someone who doesn't know computer science to teach it, which has its own challenges. And so what we believe is coaches who have real mastery of the computer science, who can take students not just to the current like beginner level, but answer the questions that really push them beyond and get to them to that point where they can create anything they want to. So that's kind of the differentiation we hope to bring is really bring expertise into the high school field. Very cool.
Very cool. You mentioned having at the local school, they've got a teacher of record that teaches the class, quote unquote, teaches the class. How do they use the material that Two Sigma provides, or the coaches, or
Yeah. So the teachers that are in like on the ground, so to speak, they actually don't have to do anything. They just sit there, take attendance, the physical attendance that's required. And then our team, like if it's myself or one of our other teacher coaches, we come in and we Zoom with as if we were there every single period. So
so the teacher of record's basically just taking physical attendance, and then they can swipe on Tinder all day long.
If they want to, correct. Yeah. Do anything they want to. Hope is that they can have their prep period time. They can do anything they want to for their other work. But their students are fully engaged with us. And so like I am the one that has to make sure that every student's learning, that every student's engaged, which has some challenges virtually. But what I've found, I've taught students in China, I've taught students from kindergarten on up through college. And so as long as you find a way to connect and build a relationship with students, and this goes for any coaching, like as long as you build that relationship and they trust that you have their best interest, they're going to stay engaged. And so that's what is one of our big findings this first year, is that you could actually do way more and build just as good of relationships with students, even if you aren't physically in the room with them. And that's like the feedback from our students. We actually went to go visit one of our schools in Kansas City. And that's the first thing students said is like, it feels like Mr. Eno's in the room with us. Like he asks us about how our sports teams are doing. Like he cares about how we're doing in computer science, and that helps us overcome all the challenges that we face. And so I think that's always kind of one of the tenets of coaching is like, you have to be able to build relationships with your students. And so it's the same thing with virtual. And so, yeah, that's our goal is like, we want to be the teacher. Like we want us to feel like we're there in person, even though we're virtual.
Yeah. I mean, you said it yourself, you have to have that relationship. There has to be a chemistry there. You have to earn their trust if they're going to listen to you. Right. So that stuff's super important. Cool. Do you guys work from pre-recorded material at all, or is it all one-to-many live? Like if you've got a class of 20 sitting in front of your Zoom computer on the other end, right? Are you doing the teaching every single day? Do you guys have pre-recorded material that they are expected to watch for like maybe homework or something? What does that look like?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we have pre-recorded material. I've made a library of YouTube videos this year. And what we do is we basically see what exists out there on YouTube in like small 5-minute clips. And we see, okay, where's there the gap? And that's where I come in and kind of fill the gap with video content. But yeah, you hit it on the head. We use a flipped classroom where we'll assign the video content for homework. And that way they have that kind of base understanding. All of the videos that we create and that we kind of curate, we add a layer of kind of mastery questions on top of it so that we know, okay, did the student just like click play and then go do their laundry and not pay attention? Or did they actually learn the material that they need? So we have that layer of questions just as a quick mastery check before they come to us the next day. And then we look at that data and then we basically say, okay, most of you have this. Here's one thing that I just wanted to clarify based on one of the questions that you might have missed. And then here's the exercise that builds on that content that will allow you to actually apply what you learned. And so yeah, they'll be getting the lecture for homework. And then as soon as they get in class, they get the support they need to build a project, to follow an exercise, and to use what they learned.
Your library of YouTube videos, is that essentially, are you going through YouTube videos and making a playlist of other people's videos, or are you recording them all specifically for Two Sigma and they're just hosted on YouTube?
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. So again, it depends on our course, and it depends on the needs of our students. And so this first year we've used some of the open source videos that are out there, but then we realized, hey, our students like are having trouble with like XY plane and Cartesian coordinates. Doesn't necessarily have like to do a specific with computer science, but we're like, hey, let's build a video on like how to map out coordinates, or let's build out a video that talks about what's a good example? Algebraic equations that can help like design some of their images. So we do certain things, or even like talking about RGB colors or whatever it is. We create those videos so that the students like now have access to watch that whenever they want to. But there's also great videos out there. Like we don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's amazing lectures out there.
For sure.
We find those and we basically, again, as a coach, we curate the best. So if there's something really good out there that's going to help our student level up, we'll leverage that. If it doesn't exist, then I create a video that can then be a part of our own library. So yeah, that's our way of using YouTube and how we curate as coaches.
I'm curious to know if you have, or if you will in the future, get pushback from school administrators knowing that all of the content is not Two Sigmas, does not belong to you. From my point of view, there is a ton of great content out there and you're wasting your time reinventing the wheel. And I think you're doing the right thing. And I think you're doing it the smart way. But I wonder, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder if from an administrator, from someone who's hiring you and paying for the 2 Sigma access, I wonder if you're gonna get maybe a little bit of pushback because not all of the content is yours.
Great question. So in my 10 years of education, I've found that administrators are very busy and
they don't care.
yeah, so they rarely get in the weeds of the curriculum. They rarely get in the weeds beyond looking at like, what are the outcomes? They might look at a report on like how well students did on the AP exam or whatever it is. And if those numbers are high, they're like, whatever you did is working, keep doing it. So we haven't got pushback yet. And I think, again, our hope is that by providing that 2 Sigma outcome, we can say, hey, look, like we are pulling in the best, like in this world of information. It's not necessarily like the creation, it's the curation that matters the most as coaches. But we also want to be able to show our expertise by creating the content that doesn't exist. So that's where we want to be kind of a solution provider. And it's the same thing with the tooling that we're using as well. There's some tools that you can piece together to provide a pretty high quality experience for students and be able to get good data. But there's also gaps in all those tools. And so we're going to be creating some tooling and a platform that fills in the gaps in the current kind of educational environments so that our students can get the best, highest quality instruction, no matter where they are.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. I think you're smart to leverage existing stuff. Even, you know, the CMU graphics library that you said you guys use. I mean, why would you not? You know what I mean? So I hope that works out well. The reason I think I brought that up is because I remember back when I was at university, you know, I don't know, it wasn't an administrator level maybe, but the teachers wouldn't let us use things like Wikipedia, which is like, you know, which is the single like biggest depot of human knowledge in the history of the human race. Probably was at the time too. But you know, it was you know what, it was unedited, I guess, by professional editors at the time. So it was, you know, new technology. They were curious about it. Anyways, neither here nor there. How do schools find you?
So yeah, that's one of the challenges being an early stage startup. Again, obviously we're doing our best to reach out to as many schools who we think might have the need. And obviously we have our website, we're going to conferences, we're doing our very best to reach out to schools, but yeah, we still haven't found our best distribution channels to get to as many schools as we're hoping to impact. But yeah, right now it's our website, going onto our website to find us. And yeah, we'll be going to conferences, school conferences in the summertime to try and reach as many administrators as we can.
Nice. Very cool. Trying to think what else. Can you, I mean, maybe just tell us like a story or two about some wins that you guys have had with some students.
Yeah. So what's been interesting about teaching in 6 different states across the country, 6 very different schools. We have very, very different demographics. We have a school in Kansas City that is kind of 95% Black and very different than our school in Texas, which is a Christian school that is predominantly white. We have a school in Massachusetts that's a private school that is a lot more advanced. And so we're seeing a lot of these different needs. And the common thread is that they need coaching. Like that's the common thread. It doesn't matter if they're advanced, they still need someone there to help guide them through the challenging parts to help kind of unlock their full potential. And then at the intro level, if they don't have the strongest math background, they still need coaches to help guide them and get them into what computer science is and what it can help them with. And so even though it's different, they all have similar needs. And what's been amazing is like we've seen so much growth no matter where our students are. And so that's been my biggest win is like, I've taught at like a public school in California. I've taught at a private school in Maryland. And I've always felt like I'm not reaching enough students. Like, yeah, sure. If you're in my class, I can help you out. But I've always wanted to have a bigger reach. And so I think that's been my biggest win this first year is that I'm influencing students across the country. And I think the more teachers we bring on, we have other teachers as well. It's not just me. So the more I can coach them and guide them, build the curriculum and the tools, I'm expanding my reach further. And so that's our hope, is that by bringing on some of the best teachers, giving them the tooling that they need and the support that they need, we can now expand their reach. And so now they don't have to stay in one geographic location. They don't have to be limited to like the class load that they can manage. We can put a team behind them. We can say, hey, what is your sweet spot? If you like to create content, go ahead and create some content for our videos. If you like to build relationships, you're going to be front and center with our students in the classroom. If you like to build assessments that are projects that allow students to creatively show what they've learned, like we'll plug you into that part of our school. And so we're trying to kind of reframe what it means to be a teacher or a coach, to say, hey, look, like we want you to play to your strengths. We don't want you to have to do everything. We don't want you to be a computer science teacher, department chair, coach of the basketball team, and in charge of the Dungeons and Dragons club. Like that's what it normally feels like when you're out of school, is you just have to wear 20 different hats because there's nobody else to do it. Yeah. We want our teachers to be focused on their area of expertise, and then we'll say, okay, what do you need when it comes to computer science, and we'll give you the best. And so we're finding that works. Like it's amazing. Like if you change the model to focus on strengths and student needs, then they're going to have a lot better outcomes. And unfortunately, a lot of it's like, oh, well, we've always just thrown a teacher in front of the classroom and in front of students, and we force them to teach 4 different classes and 150 different kids. And actually, what if you didn't do it that way? What if you had the team that allows certain teachers to focus on a small group of students? Those students might be on a similar skill set with other students across the country. So they may not be like locked into their geography. They could find other students that are at their skill level. They can build and develop with the community, and then they can be coached by the best in the country. And so we're hoping that starts to become just a new model where schools can realize, oh, I don't have to do it this way. I could actually save some money and not have to like scramble and find someone full time to do a small computer science load. I can just hire the best and just allow my students to get into this larger community around the country.
Dude, I think that's got to be a huge part of your value proposition is the money, the money savings, especially when you're working with public schools that are already on such a tight budget, and just the level of quality, you know, per dollar spent is going to be so much higher.
Right.
You know, right. I mean, it just is. How huge of an impact was the coronavirus pandemic to this business, to allow this to even happen?
Yeah, I mean, before this, before the COVID hit, probably wouldn't have even like thought of this.
Wouldn't have been considered, I don't think.
Exactly. And so yeah, I think once I realized, like, so I've coached students in different capacities. I mentioned before even the pandemic hit, I taught students in China. I've coached students around the country, like one-on-one entrepreneurial projects. And so as I taught virtually more and more, I thought like this could actually be done really well if you take the right approach and you build like virtual first, instead of like, oh, I'm going to take what I did physically and throw it onto Zoom. Like that doesn't do a good job. But once we realized, hey, like students in schools, like some students really thrive during COVID because they're like, oh, this is my best way to learn. Like I'd like to like be at home and learn online and have that flexibility. So once we saw that it was possible and some schools were more open to it, then it's like, hey, we can pull this off. And
the floodgates opened.
Right, exactly. So COVID definitely opened the door for us to step through and say, hey, we're going to provide the highest quality virtual instruction.
Very cool. Awesome. Steven, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to chat about before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of it. I mean, I think, again, a lot of what we're trying to do at Two Sigma School is is again, reframe what it means to be a coach in the classroom, and really realize that like computer science may seem like, why would you need a coach in computer science? It's like this, like you said, it's like a nerdy, like boring topic that you just sit out in front of a computer and you do it by yourself. That's, I think, what turns people off of computer science. Once you realize you can be with other people and you can have a coach help you through these problems, and help you build really cool stuff, then you can unlock the magic. So yeah, I think that's our main message.
I love this, Steven. I love your energy. I love your approach to this. We were talking before we hit record. I was very much into computers when I was growing up. I was born in 1980. I got my first computer in 1990. And at that point, I was basically an autodidact, just kind of teaching myself, sitting in a dark room, hacking away. And I can only imagine the profound effect it would have had if I had someone there to kind of walk me through problems. I think it was also, it was an interesting development to have that challenge to figure out for myself, but I think I could have gotten a lot further, a lot faster with a coach, and frankly, it could have been more fun than sitting in a room by myself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's possible, like some really talented kids like you were, could learn it on their own.
Well, and I would argue it's not even about talent. I think it's temperament, right? Not everybody has the temperament to sit in front of a computer in a room by themselves.
Right.
It's a group thing. It's just going to be more fun. It's going to be more accessible.
Yes, exactly. And that's our hope, is make it more accessible. We want to make it so kids and students can realize that, hey, like, oh, I could build something in the future. Like I could shape what the future looks like. Once we unlock, hopefully, enough students like that, then hopefully the future becomes a little bit brighter. And so that's our hope.
I love it, man. I love your energy. Steven, you've got a summer of code kind of computer camp that you want to offer to our listeners and viewers. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd love for you to go to our website, twosigma.school. We have a link at Summer of Code, where basically high school students could spend however much time they want to, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, taking any of our courses. And so basically we want to give students the option to either try out a course in the 2-week time frame, or get credit for a course. If they take 4 weeks with us, they can get a semester's worth of credit on their transcript. If they take the full 6 weeks, they can get a year-long's worth of credit for the course that they take with us. And so it's kind of like a boot camp feel, where it is going to be kind of 2 to 4 hours a day during that Summer of Code, but they'll be able to walk away with a much deeper understanding of whichever course they take, from our Introduction to Computer Science course, or our AP courses, all the way up to data science and cybersecurity and artificial intelligence.
That's awesome. Yeah. And 2 to 4 hours a day, and you can walk away in 6 weeks with a year-long worth of credit. That's nothing to sneeze at either.
Right, exactly.
Sweet. Steven Eno, thank you so much for joining us on the Remarkable Coach podcast. This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. And thank you to our viewers and listeners. We'll see y'all next time. Cheers.